Good morning, gentlemen. You are listening to the Gird Up podcast. I'm glad that you're here. I'm Charlie Ingemach. I'm the founder and co-host of this particular episode. This is a Man Talk Monday, so you can hear from both me and Jason Fry. We call him Jay Fry because we love him. If you are enjoying the things that you're hearing, I hope that you keep coming back, keep learning from us as we grow as men of God, and keep sharing those journeys and those lessons along the way with you. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can do that on Patreon. All that information is at the end of the show, or you can choose to sponsor an episode or multiple episodes. If you do that, let me know what you want to do and what you want me to talk about. Send me some money, and then we'll work out the details as to how we advertise for you. This is a great opportunity for thousands of men all over the world to hear about your corporation or your company or your ministry or whatever it might be. Thank you to those of you who have already supported our podcast financially. God bless you all. Thank you for easing the burden on me and easing the burden of putting this together for you. Blessings on all of you. I love you. Thank you very much. If you're not following us on social media, you got to make sure you do that on Instagram and on Facebook. There's also a Facebook community there. I'd love to see some guys engage in that and make it their own and start having conversations with each other. I don't have anything else to say besides thanks for your patience with me. I know that these episodes haven't been getting out quite as fast as I was hoping they would, but we'll get there, guys. We'll get there. God's blessings. I hope that this podcast is a blessing to you as it is to me. We're all growing together. We're all getting better. And as the Lord lays things on my heart, I'm going to keep sharing them with you. So God's blessings. Enjoy your week and enjoy today's episode of the Gird Up Podcast.
Hello, this is Seth and Jenna Herlick, and we are also known as Him and Her Worship.
We are also the creators of the What Do I Know podcast, where we talk about life while having very little life experience ourselves.
We are a normal couple passionate about lighting hearts on fire for Jesus, who just happen to play music.
We write our own original worship music, and we play in churches all around the country, and we'd love to connect with you.
We have lots of ways for you to do that. On Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, we are at Him and Her Worship, and we have a website, and we are himandherworship.com.
Also, check out our podcast at Apple Podcasts and other streaming platforms.
God bless you. Thanks so much for your time, and we cannot wait to meet you in person.
You are listening to the Gird Up Podcast. To gird up is an ancient way of preparing oneself for hard work or a battle ahead. Our work is to reclaim masculinity in the modern world and to live out our calling as men of God. Here you will find a community of believers working hard to become the men that God created us to be. Now it's time to roll up your sleeves and let's get to work. I'm Charlie Ingemach.
And I'm Jason Fry.
And this is the Gird Up Podcast. We're Man Talk Monday-ing today, so happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
It's the beginning of a new week here, and we're going to start with rule number 3 by Jordan B. Peterson, which is, help me out here.
Make friends with those who want the best for you.
Yeah, make friends with those who want the best for you. So just real talk, this is the second time we recorded this because we wanted to make sure we treat it the right way and give it the appropriate treatment here.
Oh, we should have said this was the first time we did it, so it just so like everyone just has on.
Oh yeah, transparency is the wrong approach to every situation, right? So
okay, that just made me sound really bad. That's it. Cut.
All right. Anyway, but we want to. It's a big time important rule, is what I'm saying, and we value it enough to come back and say we can do a better job of it. So I hope that that's what we do here.
Well, right. I think we were holding each other accountable.
We absolutely were, and that's something that we didn't talk about really in the first go around here is accountability to each other, and so I think a lot of times, especially as young people in relationships. We don't have to be really intentional about them, right?
Well, and before Charlie gets going here, just reiterate, the rule is make friends with people who want the best for you. And we're kind of going to be talking about the idea of just accountability. So, yeah.
So when we're young, we don't have to really work on relationships. They kind of happen naturally. If you play football, the guys who are on the football team are going to be your friends, right? This is the people that you have in common, especially because we were talking about our circles as young people were pretty much Christian circles. Lutheran high schools, Lutheran grade schools, either Lutheran colleges or, a public school that has heavy Christian presence and ministries on campus and that kind of thing. And so naturally surrounded by people who at least were kind of running in the same direction, and people who had very similar interests in mind. But as we get older, as we start to get out of those situations and into not the real world, because all the world is the real world, but as we start to get, I guess, independent as adults, or as now that we are independent as adults, it's important to be really intentional about those relationships and actually critique them and think about what's going on in those relationships. I don't think we do a good job of that.
Yeah. I think about, you said when you're younger, you don't really have to work that hard in friendships. And I think of my daughter. My daughter is 6, and she's meeting all these, meeting people at school. She's at a new school right now, and like, so and so has a puppy, and now we're best friends.
That's right.
Has
a puppy.
That's as simple as it was, right? Like, it's as simple as it is for a 6-year-old, or like my son who's 3. It's like, you like to play in dirt? I love the dirt. I am like a professional dirt player. We're best friends, right? Like, it just, there's so little things to consider when you're that age. But then as you leave the confines, or you leave the confines of, like, your parents' house, and you are living on your own, oftentimes, like, you almost take we talked about this, the passive approach, or like, you aren't intentional, like, you just want to fit into a group, right? Whether that's people you work with, or maybe it's people at the gym you attend, or maybe it's the people at the bar you go to, like, you want to get in with a group of people that's going to be friendly and nice, and you have a good time. But when you pick those groups of people, right, are you making sure that they're going to hold you accountable? Are you making sure that their beliefs line up with you? Not to say that you can't have friends with people that don't share the same beliefs, right? Like, that would kind of defeat the purpose of, like, us going out and being influences in the world, right? As Christians. But who are those people that you're allowing to influence, like, your own personal decisions? And do those people want what's best for you? And are they aligned with, Christian moral goals and values,
Yeah. Well, and even further down that path is, you don't necessarily need to give, you can be, you can have somebody in your life who you don't give access to every portion of your life.
Oh, good point. Yep.
So
absolutely.
if there's a guy at the gym who's super strong and he's a great trainer, and you like working out together, but he doesn't have the same beliefs as you, or he doesn't drinks too much on the weekend or whatever, you don't have to go out and drink with him. You don't have to conform to his way of living. You can still take advantage of that take advantage of that relationship, and in a positive way.
Yeah, exactly.
And where you're mutually building each other up. So you're a positive influence on him, and he's a positive influence on you, at least in certain areas. Like, you wouldn't necessarily bring that guy home and let him spend time with your kids, but he makes you stronger, and he makes you a better man, at least in that aspect, in that aspect of life.
Well, and in that scenario, right, in that example, like, in the Bible, it talks about how we can be salt and light into the world, right? Like, in that instance, like, you guys, you can make someone else better while they're making you better, right? Introduce them, if, let's say they do have an unhealthy relationship with, like, alcohol, right? Introduce them to what a healthy relationship with that is, right? Like, hey, like, if you build enough social capital with somebody, you can be that, where you both want what's best for each other, and kind of offset his weakness with your strength, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, we've known each other for a while now. I really appreciate everything you've done, like, in terms of, like, help me maybe be stronger as in physically. Something that just concerns me about you, and I hope I can say this, is, like, you seem to drink a lot of alcohol, right? Like, or you seem to drink a lot. Like, is there something going on, right? And that gives you an opportunity to, like, maybe help him in his struggle, right? He's helped you in your struggle as from a physical standpoint, but, like, that then gives you access to help them,
Right. And I guess, so then where it gets dangerous then, like, and where you might want to cut that relationship off, is when you then are, like, facing consistent pressure from this guy to live the way that he lives, right?
Absolutely.
Here comes the goat.
Oh man! Oh hey, there's
Hey,
Pringle.
goat.
Hey, goat. That was the goat intermission on the podcast.
That's right. Hey, Pringle.
Yeah, she doesn't care.
She didn't care at all.
Yeah.
just living her little goat life.
Living her best life. Right.
But
But no, like essentially, if you aren't being, and that's where I think, Charlie, if you're not being intentional about it, if you're not completely aware of someone else's influence on your life, someone that does want to bring you into, whether it's a vice like alcohol or something like that, whatever it may be, right? If you're not aware of what's happening, all of a sudden you're dragged into it and you find yourself enjoying that, right?
Yeah.
But if you are actually thinking about, I feel like this isn't really what's best for me, and it's a continual thing, and maybe you even mentioned something to that person about, this isn't really me, and I don't really feel like this is something that I can really agree with. And if they're persistent with that, it's like, maybe our relationship's done, right? Because clearly I've told you that this isn't me. This isn't what I want to do. This doesn't match up with like my beliefs. I think maybe we got to cut ties.
Yeah.
Right. Or maybe just reduce that friendship to a more superficial friendship.
Well, right. Yeah. Like I was going to get to that. Like it doesn't have to be this big like breakup, moment where you're, announcing to them that you're moving them down the list and they're now friend number 8 instead of friend number 2. Like it doesn't have to be that. It can just legitimately be like, no, man, I'm not going to go to the bar with you.
Yeah.
Like it could just be that simple. Nope, I need to spend time with my family.
Mm-hmm.
Or hey, I'm gonna do something. I got something else to do today. Or even to the extent of like if it's somebody that you're texting, right, and the conversation keeps going in the wrong direction, text somebody else.
Right.
Like it doesn't have to be like a big loud confrontational whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to have a conference about it and share everything that you're thinking. It's just intentionally which friendships are you grooming,
Mm-hmm.
and which friendships are you kind of letting fall to the wayside. Be acquaintances instead of
and
close friendships.
even a lot of times, like like what you just said, like maybe you just limit the communication, or maybe you say like I'd rather not look at that on your phone. I'd rather not go to the bar with you. I'd rather whatever it may be. If like if that's important to them, they may stop reaching out to you. Like that friendship may just come and go, and it's like, okay, that ran its course.
Well, and then if they ask you why,
yeah, absolutely,
then you can have that conversation,
and you kind of hope they do.
Yeah.
So you can actually explain to them, and then that positive influence can reciprocate to them. Then like, well, this is why I don't do X, Y, Z, right?
Yeah. So. So there's two things. There's two other sides to this. I think we need to talk about. One is that that not everyone who is. So if we're surrounding ourselves with people who want the best for you, there are sometimes going to be people who don't want the best for you, who also don't want bad things for you. They just don't want the best. That was a confusing way to say that, but people can be less than a positive influence on your life without intentionally being a drag. You know what I'm saying? Like when people aren't necessarily the influence that you'd hope they would be, it's not that they're necessarily doing it on purpose.
Oh, gotcha.
It's not that they hate you.
Oh, right.
And even sometimes like somebody might sabotage you. I guess sabotage is the wrong word because you have to do something on purpose to sabotage you. But like somebody might be working against you, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they hate you, right? If somebody cuts you off in traffic, it's not because they're a terrible human being, and it's not because they have a deep-seated hatred for you.
If someone cuts you off, they are a terrible person.
But they have no deep-seated resentment toward you, and you
right.
don't need to have any resentment toward them.
Mm-hmm.
It just sometimes it just is what it is. And as much as I hate that phrase, sometimes that just is the reality. And so I think you have to be careful about sometimes having those confrontational conversations where you say, "You're not the best thing for me," and they're going like, "Okay."
And I think sometimes, like, especially if, like, let's say you're being intentional about, maybe you're reducing the amount of like media that you're taking in, right? So instead of like sitting on your phone looking at Facebook or whatever it may be, you read a book called 12 Rules for Life.
That's right, by Jordan B. Peterson.
And and someone says like, "What are you doing?" Like kind of like you reading a book? Like they're not
a book called 12 Rules for Life.
Right, like they're not trying to sabotage you, but like in that moment, like they may be having a thought of like, who does this guy think he is? Like he might be a friend of yours, but it's just like, come on, really? You're reading a book? Like, yeah, in that moment, you don't have to be like, hey, we should have a talk about how you're not the best for me, right?
Right.
But like sometimes people say things like that. They don't necessarily have any ill will, but like it's almost they recognize themselves as like, man, I haven't read a book in forever. This kind of makes me feel kind of crummy. Like,
And
like,
what do you do when you feel crummy?
like let's spread that around. Misery loves company.
That's right.
You know, and so like sometimes you get people's base reactions to something that you're doing. It's like, you know, when you're trying to get better, it makes you an easier target that way. And not that you get targeted in a malicious way, but some, you know, like you like, gosh, like I'd rather sleep than wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go work out. It's like, well, me too, but I know this is going to be better for me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And that leads, it's an easy segue into the last thing I was going to talk about then is vulnerability, right? If somebody's unwilling to be vulnerable with you, or if you're unwilling to be vulnerable with other people, then you can't really know whether or not they want the best for you, right? And not that you should go around being vulnerable with everybody all the time. But some of what you said, like if you're talking about how you get up in the morning.
I just have a lot of feelings.
If you're talking about how you get up in the morning every morning and go work out, and you're talking about it and you're acting on it all the time, and somebody says like, "Oh, is that because you're fat?" You're like, "Come on, man,
come on." Yeah,
you know,
right.
like if you're gonna get off, like so. I guess are you able to be vulnerable with these people, and are they able to be vulnerable with you?
Right. There's got to be like a reciprocation there. Like, and you obviously you pick and choose those people that you can do that with. Where it's like maybe you are struggling with something, right? Like yeah, you know what? Like I do feel fat and I struggle with this, but this is the way it makes me better, right?
Yeah.
And I know that I need to do this in order to, you know, get healthier. And you would hope that someone who wants the best for you is like, either, sweet, like, do you need me to text you in the morning? Like, I can help make sure you're awake. You know, like, do you want me to ask you, like, on a weekly basis how everything's going? You know, check in on your goal. What can I do to support you and encourage you? You know what I mean? And like, this is my like, I recently talk to a buddy of mine like on a weekly basis, and we just kind of check in on each other. Like I know like people hear about accountability partners and say what you will about it, but like I feel like for me personally, and I know he'd say the same thing, like the fact that we just check in, it doesn't have to be a big serious conversation every week, but we just kind of talk about it. Hey, how'd your week go? And did you do anything like exciting, or did you do anything that you're kind of maybe upset with yourself about? And then and what's really cool is like we kind of like lay almost like confess our sins to each other, and it's just like remind each other that, okay, you're forgiven. Like don't let this drag you down. Like Jesus died for that sin too. And man, it's been like it's been really a blessing in doing that and connecting with him. And so like, if you feel like you got someone in your life that you could do that with, like reach out and see if they want to do it. You know?
Yeah.
You know, like what's the worst that could happen? They could say no.
Yeah.
know? And then you find someone else that can help you out, you know?
Well, and if you're looking for close friends, like that's a great place to start, is who's going to consistently forgive you and give you the gospel.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely,
awesome.
man.
So important rule for life is make friends with people who want the best for you, and make sure that you're one of those friends that wants the best for other people as well.
Because we want the best for you.
That's right. We love you guys. Have a great week.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Gird Up Podcast. If you like what you're hearing on our podcast, make sure you're sharing it with friends and family, men in your life who you think need to hear our message. You can find us on social media, on Facebook under the Gird Up Podcast, and there's a Gird Up community as well there where you can interact with other men on the journey toward Christian manhood. You can find us on Instagram as girdup_like_a_man. If you'd like to help us bring our message to more men just like you all around the world, you can hit up our Patreon account. Type in www.patreon.com/girdup. And finally, please leave a 5-star rating or review on whatever platform you use to listen to our podcast, whether it's iTunes or Spotify. What that does is it helps us get more attention in the podcast world and bring more men to our message. Thank you again for listening to our podcast. Thank you for all the ways you support us and help spread the word. Until next time, go gird up and be the man that God created you to be.